Well, that was a lot faster what I'm usually waiting. So yeah, my Capri is up on the roll deck, and now yeah, tow it back home, fix that fuel pump, and see if I can still get the Red Deer tonight. If not, then really early tomorrow. So overall though, pretty good. Just, and they got here fast and very professional, which I like that a lot. So it's fixed? I don't get it. The fuel pump actually wasn't the problem. But I don't get this. Why did this happen? So for context, the car died on me going to try to get up to Red Deer. And how it did it was like it wasn't getting fuel. But now I can start up just fine. And I mean, it's not quite warmed up yet, but before, if I tried to rev it, it would just die. And now, what gives? I'm gonna let this thing warm up and take it for a test drive around the block. And then if so, then that means I am gonna make it to the swap meet tonight. So, or tomorrow, I should say. So, yeah, I am pleasantly surprised, but annoyed at the same time. So the car is driving, but I did not replace the fuel pump. It wasn't the fuel pump, but it was having a fuel delivery issue. The fuel filter was fine. I took the line off. I'm like, you know what? Before I really delve into this, let's just see if maybe if the fuel pump is fine. And yeah, so I took the line off because I finally got enough energy at 9:30 at night, and it did it. I am so amazed, like very confused, but also amazed. And oh, that looks like somebody vandalized the vet over there. That's sad. There's a cop car sitting there with a bunch of police tape. That's no good, but I'm happy. Well, that was short-lived. Same issue again. But it actually wasn't the checkable, because actually now it started to surge, so I do wonder if it actually did vapor lock, which it shouldn't have. It wasn't running that hot, like running warm, but not like hot. It was maybe like halfway up the gauge, which is fine. That car runs routinely at that temperature without doing that, so back to the drawing board with the dead Capri. Like, after I get this thing home, it's being parked and I'm not touching it at this point. Truthfully, I want almost nothing to do with the Polter-MK right now. Just incredibly frustrating. Hi everyone, welcome back to Katarina's Garage. My name is Katarina Lloyd, and let's introduce Polter-MK here. She's named that now because of everything that has happened within the past few days, and just with the overall ownership of this car. So this is my 1981 Mercury Capri. It has a 200 inline 6 under the hood, C4 automatic, 7.5 rear end with 2.73s in it. Nothing really special, to be honest, in that regard, although it's got some rare, like one really rare option, and kind of unusual to find these inline 6 Foxes in general, let alone an inline 6 Capri. But having said that, this car, for 2 days in a row, has left me stranded on the side of the road. So, let's go back to Friday, because right now it's Sunday. Friday, driving the car along, and this thing, without fault, in almost the exact same place every single time I drive it, it'll get this really bad shake on the highway that lasts about 5, maybe 10 minutes, and then it goes away. But in contrast to that, though, is that I actually lose power, a little bit of power. So, I never quite figured that one out of, like, why is it exactly doing that? It made no sense whatsoever. I would have to downshift, I would have to give it a lot more throttle just to maintain speed. and sometimes I just lose speed no matter what. But you know, and then after the 5 or 10 minutes or so of it shaking, like, and it shakes the steering wheel, it shakes the dash, it shakes everything in the car. It's quite a good shake, to be honest. But then it goes away, and it's like something I can never explain. But then driving it through Olds, because I was trying to get the Red Deer to have my stuff set up for the swap meet that happened yesterday. But then the car dies on me. I'm like, oh great, in the middle of Olds. So I'm trying to push it. I do not have the energy to push this car that far. And luckily, some people ran over, but then actually somebody in their truck came by with a tow strap really quick and just hooked it up, and he was actually surprised that I knew I would just get under there and hook the tow strap up and it was no big deal. I'm used to doing that because working at the dyno in the summer, I do it all the time. You know, I'll do it 15 times a day of hooking, you know, cars up that way. But in saying that though, so the car, you know, like I said, it breaks down and I'm right by bumper to bumper, so I'm like, okay, I'm at a spot where at least, you know, I'm in a safe location and I can, you know, look at the car closely. So I get under the hood, I am dicking around with some stuff, and then, you know, because I was just confirming with other things, like, you know, are the spark plugs just like completely screwed? So I managed to get the first one out, and I'm like, actually that looks totally okay. So now, to be honest, I didn't pull them all out, but I was trying to, but the other ones are pretty stuck in there pretty good. So I'm just like, I have not really had the energy over the past while to really work on the car very much. So, having said that, yeah, anyways. So, I'm in the parking lot, and like I said, I'm trying to diagnose this thing, and kind of running out of ideas, but then I had this bit of a thought, but I wanted to call my friend Roy Marco, just to see if we're kind of on the same wavelength. I told him what was going on, and he immediately said, fuel pump, which I'm like, okay. I was thinking potentially fueling issue, and so what I did to confirm, or what I thought was the fuel pump, turns out wasn't, because I did some tests. So the first thing I did was I took the fuel filter off, I blew through it with my mouth, and it's totally clear. I'm like, okay. So then I try and crank it over after I put everything back together. Still doesn't want to go. Okay. Weird. So afterwards, I pull the rubber line off that goes to the fuel filter and just have the metal line in place. And I crank it for like 10 seconds, and I see, is there fuel all over the place in the engine bay? No, there's not. Okay. So at that point, I'm like, oh great, my fuel pump that I only got about a month ago is dead. But then I get it back here, and after, you know, again, low energy, and it wasn't until about 9:30 at night where I was able to really work on the car. It cooled down enough to where I could do it. I had to get a pair of vice grips that were a good pair of vice grips. Could not find my good pair of vice grips, so I had to go buy some, which meant jumping in on my dad's bike and driving, because Stitch is still down and needs a throttle cable, which hopefully will be fixed tomorrow, actually. But, okay, so I get the vice grips, I get the line off, because it will not come off with a line wrench. It's just, sometimes with these old lines, a line wrench will just strip it. Sometimes you need vice grips, which in this one is definitely the case. The other one's the same case too. Yeah, so anyways, after, you know, that, I get the line off, I'm like, let me test something. Get in the car, turn it over, I look with the line off for about 5 seconds, I look, hey look, fuel pump's working. Okay, I put it all back together, boom, fires up. I drive it around town for like half an hour, and I did take it up a little bit up the highway too, and it seemed to be fine. I'm like, okay. I was like, okay, cool. So that means I'll make the swap meet on Saturday. I get to the swap meet. It's all fine. It has that, like I said, getting back on the highway again, it has that shake that it always has, but then it goes away. But then, the one thing it's never done is it did it twice that day. Coming back from the swap meet, it did that violent shake again. And so I'm at the side of the highway, and something that kind of theorized with talking with one of my friends that happens to be an engineer as well is just like, you know, what could have happened is your fuel pump, even though it's a relatively new pump, only a month old, there are check valves in the fuel pump, and one of those check valves could have actually gotten stuck, restricting fuel flow. That's a possibility. And so when this happened, the first thing I did was I tap on it, and then I jump back in it, try and start it. It won't really start. I'm like, okay, that's not the issue. And then just in case if I needed a little more oomph with that tap, I add a little hammer and I just tap it a little bit heavier with that hammer. Still not the case. I'm like, okay, great. So now the problem, and I get it back here, and what's really funny, it gets off the tow truck. Like, the tow truck's still there, but it's off the tow truck, it's unhooked. And I jump in it, I'm just like, you know what, let's just see if this works. Fire it up, and runs just fine. Like, why is it doing this? So, it's one of two things. It can only be these two things, because ignition doesn't make sense, because ignition wouldn't get better, it wouldn't cause the shake, none of that. Because ignition only deals with this, you know, everything with the spark and all that, right? So, even though I could replace the ignition box, I do have a spare one, but it's not going to make a difference, I know that. So, it's one of two things. It's either it's vapor locking, which it's possible. It was a little warm that day, like both days that it did actually do this, and I think the reason why I didn't do it in the morning, or at least if it is vapor lock, is that because it was cooler in the morning. Like, not cold, but it was cooler. It was, you know, like sweater weather, potentially, you know. It was like 7 degrees, but not really sunlight yet. So, it was fine with doing that. But then I got to like 25 or 26 yesterday, so, you know, that's what potentially did it. However, there's another more plausible explanation for this. And again, both of these have their validity of vapor lock, which if you don't know what vapor lock is, it's basically the fuel line getting so hot that the gas inside actually turns into vapor, and the car will not run off of just the vapor. That way, it does need the liquid as well. So it's like, okay. So that could be a possibility. And I could insulate the line and see if that makes a difference. There's also something that I could try as a sort of old school trick with a wooden clothesline. I actually have some, I believe, in my Mustang. I can go try on here and see if that makes a difference. But the other thing that I think is more plausible is that there's debris in the gas tank, and what's actually happening in those moments when the shake is happening and when it eventually just, you know, bucks and dies, is that, like I said, debris in the gas tank, and the debris is getting stuck within the pickup for the fuel. And that is causing it to restrict the fuel flow, and eventually it picks up so much that it stops running entirely. But then, as everything cools off and whatever else, that debris falls back into the tank. And you can start it right back up afterwards. So, it's one of those two things. And, because as well, like, I didn't think of vapor lock when it happened on Friday. Reason being is, it did not surge. Saturday, though, it did surge. So that's why vapor lock might actually come into play here, because for vapor lock, it will actually surge before it just dies out entirely. So there's some things to figure out with this car, and you know, like, it's really funny, because right now, like, I'll do a cold start of the car, and watch how good this starts. It actually starts better than the other car, which is funny as hell. Even though the carburetor way overfills the start too. So, let me just get into the car. And you can see, and it's quite a mess. I was, again, at the swap meet yesterday, and not as much sold as what I would have liked. But honestly, to cold start this thing, you just go 1, 2, 3, 4. Like, that's it. So, yeah. It's just pretty wild with this car, because I truthfully do not understand why it's doing the stuff that it is. Because, yeah, leaving me stranded 2 days in a row like that, and with just some of the inexplainable things that this thing has had, and with it having all the problems it's had, you know, with like the braking system and cooking the transmission and everything. That's why I call it the Polter-MK. And that shake that I could never really understand before, I think it falls down to the motor, but it's such a bad shake that it goes to the steering wheel as well. Because I know it's not suspension or steering related. Because we've been underneath this car, other than the one tie rod end on that side, it does need to be replaced, but it's not bad enough to warrant a shake like that. So, yeah. This car is very, very strange to me. And, you know, it's something that I hope that I can actually figure out properly. And, like, insulating the line, like I said, is a solution. Potentially. I would hate to insulate the line and that not be the problem. Alternatively, though, if I insulate the line and that's not the problem, I could just use the insulation on that car. So it's just one of those things, because that car is the one I will beat on a lot more, because it's the toy versus where this one's the daily driver. Not that I don't have my fun in this car, but that car is more designed for that. It's got the bigger rad in it, it's got, you know, the better rear end, it's got a better carburetor, all this different stuff. So, yeah. But, anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and, yeah, the voodoo of the Polter-MK, which is funny because it's October, so, you know, perfect timing for it. Anyways, take care, and I'll catch you next time.